Hello and happy new year, and welcome to the very first episode of the Career Doctors for 2024. I hope you all had an amazing holiday. And I also hope that you've managed to watch the one from last week where we talk about wrapping up 2023. Regardless, we're happy you are here. There'll be lots to take, even if you take away from this, even if you haven't watched last week's. So this is all about conversations to cure your work life. This is series with my amazing co-host Sonia Miller and I. My name's Andrea Horvath, in case we haven't met. Is all about for the woman who has felt like maybe she's settling. Maybe she has been working really hard at doing something and is not getting the results. Maybe you've got all this success on paper, and to everybody in the outside world, it looks like you're killing it. But on the inside, there's just part of you that's saying, this is not it. Like maybe part of your soul feels like it's dying. I know when I was in the wrong career and doing the wrong things, I know I felt like my soul was dying. And maybe you also know that you're meant to be doing something different. If any of those apply for you, this series is made for you. Today's episode is called Kickstart 2024 with Insight, Imagination, and Inspiration. Now, what I love about this episode is that notice we didn't say kickstart with execution, plan, strategy. That's not how we started. Now, we all know that action is necessary. We need to take action in our life if we want to create results. That is a given. That's a known. However, we always want to be taking action from an aligned place, from an intentional place, from a place where we actually have the inspiration and the capacity to do all these things. Because when you are in that place and space and then you take action, that's actually where you really create the most amazing results in your life. So we want to share today more about what that looks like and how you can actually create that for 2024, because that's what we want for you. We want you to feel successful. We want you to feel fulfilled. We want you to feel abundant and do and be whatever it is you want to do and be. I mean, it's going to look very different for all of you. But at the end of the day, and end of the year, when you look back, when you're at December 31st, 2024, and you're doing that reflecting, we want you to look back and say, like, this year I got it. Like, I got it. I really figured this whole thing out and how to actually feel really good in my career and do what works for me. So if this sounds like something that appeals to you, please stay tuned. And if you're here live, we'd love for you to say hi. The comments are always open for any questions, any comments. Please do share there. We also have a Telegram group that we've started where you can share any insights, any ahas. We always have an aligned action and an awareness practice at the end of our episodes. You can share those there. And we encourage you because it's a lot easier to do these things that we're talking about when you've got community around you, when you've got other people who are creating success and doing things in their career a little bit differently maybe than others are doing it. It's always great to have others around. So without further ado, I'm going to ask you all a question here before we dive in. And this is a really important question. And it's actually something I think Sonia and I both highly recommend you ask yourself throughout the year. But here's the question. I'll love you to throw it in the comments because I really want to see where you're at. Starting 2024 right now, how much capacity do you feel like you have on a scale of 1 to 10? So 1 is I don't have much capacity right now, and 10 being like, I am raring to go. This is it. Like I'm just got all this energy and ready to go. But here's the clincher part, okay? Most of the time when we look at our capacity, what we look at is our calendar. We look at our time. Do I have time for something? And this is actually the root of a lot of where people become really burnt out and unhappy and exhausted is they're only looking at the capacity on their calendar. So as you reflect upon how much capacity do I have, I want you to think about how much capacity do you have mentally? How much do you have emotionally? How much do you have spiritually? How much do you have energetically? Don't make yourself wrong for it. You know, Sonia and I always have a quick chat before we hop on these lives. And I mean, there's always a lot of synchronicity and synergy between Sonia and I. And I said, you know, what we do in our society is if we're at capacity and we stop and take a break, we call ourselves lazy. I said, we need to banish the word lazy from the English vocabulary. When you're feeling lazy, it simply means you are at capacity, and your calendar might be wide open. Okay. You might be wide open on your calendar. Your calendar is one indicator and one indicator only of how much capacity you have. So, having said all of that, asking you, how much capacity do you feel like you have right now? I'd love you to throw it to the comments and just, and noodle it. So Helen's got this morning about a 7. That's awesome. 7's a great number. That's super cool. So that is, again, like I said, something we would both recommend that if you, throughout the year, ask yourself that question. Okay. So before we dive into it, as always, we introduce ourselves. So my name's Andrea Horvath, and we haven't met before. I am a career transition coach, and I help women figure out what career or business has their name written all over it. So this is for the woman who knows she is meant for more. There's some sort of mission, some sort of calling, something she's supposed to be doing that's different than what she's doing right now. That definitely was me in my career. I used to be a CPA, climbing the corporate ladder. There was something deep in my soul that said, like, this is not it. You have not reached your full potential. There's something else you're meant to be doing. So I went on the journey to figure out, like, how do you even know what to do? Like, I knew my soul was telling me something, but like, how do you figure out? So I figured out all the pieces you need to know about yourself. And that's what I do now is I help women figure out, we take all the pieces through a framework that I have built. And it's like putting a puzzle together to figure out, like, what is it exactly that's going to make you feel fulfilled, successful, valued, have the impact, like really mission-driven women. So that's what I do when I work with women now. So Sonia, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, happy to. Love your intro. I'm excited for today. So if you don't know me, my name is Sonia Miller. I'm an empowerment coach for professional women also who feel that they're meant for more. And I am really passionate at helping women who feel this pressure, almost like they're going to pop because they know that there's that next level that they can go to, but they're just not able to reach it. And what it causes them to do is to settle. So I love to help women shift from settling to being sought after. I've been doing this for almost 30 years now, and I developed a program called the Receive Now program. And what that really helps us do in terms of going beyond those upper limits by dissolving them is illuminating the difference between operating like a hunter versus a gatherer. We are very skilled in the hunter skills, go out and get the target and take a lot of action like Andrea was talking about. And it's great. And we need to take action, but it can only take you so far. The gatherer skills are much more fun, much more easy because gatherers know where the abundance is and they simply get their basket, go to the meadow and help themselves. And that's what we actually have the capacity to do when we shift from doing to being. That's that empowering element that many of us are missing. And once we tap into that, which we talk a lot about, those skill sets of being here at the Career Doctors, those upper limits dissolve and you can receive the acknowledgement, the promotions, and the opportunities that you've longed for to really fulfill that calling that you have. So that's what I'm about. And that's why I love doing this with Andrea. All right. So with that, I'm going to go into what we're going to talk about today. As we have discovered, our format of 3 keys seems to work really, really well. So we are going to go over 3 keys to kickstart 2024 with insight, imagination, and inspiration. So one of the things you'll start to see is that we're really illuminating some less familiar ways of approaching fulfillment and dissolving your upper limits and going to the next level. And these may, for many of you, be a paradigm shifter, like big paradigm shifters. But this is those missing pieces that many of us are just really needing, those insights. So we're going to talk about regarding insights, knowing your nose. Knowing your nose, knowing what to say no to, why it's important, and how it's really the starting place, just like Andrea led us in the capacity question. Are you a capacity? Do you need to say no? We'll talk about that. The next piece is inviting imagination. Imagination is the field of infinite possibilities. However, how do you actually access that? We're going to talk about that. That's key number 2. And key number 3 is all about following the breadcrumbs of inspiration. Okay. These are all things that we open up to in our being. There's a little bit of action, but most of it is opening up to your own wisdom. So those are the 3 keys that we're going to go into. And with that, I'm going to jump into number 1, know your nose. So what does that mean? And why do we do this? And why is it so important? This is the key insight. We talked about insight for 2024. The key insight is understanding this. Many of us don't even think about our capacity. Many of us see a new year and we're excited about new possibilities. And we see this as an opportunity to wipe the slate clean. And, while I'm talking about this, if anything really like is an aha, is a light bulb moment, is something that resonates, just drop an emoji in the chat. We'd love to see and hear what is really landing for you. So anyway, the reason knowing your nose is important is that in order to receive anything new in the new year, whether it's a new job, whether it's a promotion, whether it's a different environment, a better experience, knowing what it is that you want to do, however you define that in your work life, you need to have a space in order to receive something new. And we did talk about that in our wrap up for 2023, the power of space. Now, the thing about space is we always have space, always. And so the question isn't, how do I make more space? It's, what am I doing with the space that I have? What is in the space that I have? I'm very passionate about teaching how to receive. It's its own skill set. A lot of us know how to get. Many of us don't even know what receiving is. Okay. So receiving is all about what the gatherer does. Just goes to the meadow, helps themselves, right? So we are always, believe it or not, consciously or unconsciously, helping ourselves to the abundance of life. The abundance of life is always already here. So the question isn't, how do I receive what I want? How do I receive that dream job scenario? It's, what am I receiving right now? Because we're always receiving. And so there's this space that's in our awareness and in our lives and in our calendars, and it's just filled up with whatever we're receiving. If we don't know how to say no to the things that we don't want, there is no space to receive something new. So I really want to offer this idea. Space is the non-negotiable to receive something new. Now, saying no to what you don't want, to what doesn't serve you anymore, can be scary. It has a lot of, for us, when we start to think about saying no, there's already a bunch of yeah buts. Well, I can't say no, or it's going to cost people that I care about some things, or it's going to be, I don't want to deal with the conflict of saying no. There's all kinds of things that feel like negative ramifications around saying no. So the most important thing is, let's bring in the energy of safety and how to actually do this in a way that feels not just empowering, but actually liberating, actually fun. So the main thing to know is, knowing your no doesn't mean acting on your no. Give yourself permission to know your no's. So feeling safe is important. We do that by not worrying about acting on anything. You don't have to act on anything. You just get to know what your no's are, what it is that you don't want in your life, what you are willing to let go of, what you're ready to let go of. Maybe you're not even willing, but you're ready. You're done with some things. You also know that certain things just don't work. Maybe they worked once before, they don't work now. So creating this time to just tune into What do I want to say no to? What am I ready to say no to, even if I don't know how? Just being willing to answer those questions within yourself. Now, another thing that's really important about this safety and permission to say no or to know your no's is we will stay in confusion if we don't allow ourselves the permission to know our no's. I've done a lot of life purpose work. A lot of women believe, and here's a side conversation, but we want our jobs to be related to our life purpose. Sometimes our purpose is related to our job, sometimes it's not, but there's a yearning to know our purpose. And a lot of women I've seen over the years will stay in confusion because unconsciously they believe if I know my purpose, then I'm going to have to do something about it and it's going to turn my life upside down. Okay. You don't have to act on your nose. Okay. The action part will come in later insights. So know that if you listen to your inner truth, discover what you want to say no to make space for new possibilities, the confusion will start to fall away and you will feel safe gaining that clarity because the next insights will guide you in what do I do about it? What do I do about the no's? What are my yeses, right? So with that, I invite you to get curious. Just start getting curious about your no's. Okay. We'll give you some next steps at the very end. They're going to be these 3 keys followed by an awareness practice and an aligned action. We'll guide you on how to do that. But for now, just start getting curious about your no's. And if you want to throw anything in the chat about how do you feel about saying no? Is that something that excites you? Is that something that scares you? Wherever you're at with it, it's A-okay. So Andrea, do you want to add anything to knowing your no's?
It was so good, Sonia. So good. And you hit on some really, really key points. And we do this where we think once we have an awareness about something, we have to act on it. And if we don't act on it right away, we're, lazy or whatever stories we start to tell ourselves, right? We immediately go into story. And I love what you're talking about. Just be with it. Just, just be able to give yourself permission to express what your no's are and just become aware of them. But you don't have to actually act on it. And in fact, there are absolutely things that require timing. So for an example, say you're like, okay, like for the women I work with, I am not in the right job. Okay. So say that as an awareness. You're like, or I'm in, the wrong industry or whatever it might be. Like there's a big step. So this is like a big no. There's probably a million different little no's leading up to that. So this is not about going, okay, so I'm in the wrong place. I've got to quit. That's not what we're saying. It's like, okay. And so, there's also these little no's you can actually start to take. And we'll go into this in the action steps later on. But just because you have an awareness, it might be a really big no that is going to take some time. That is going to take some planning. However, there's always going to be things you can do in the in between. One of their points I really want to just really emphasize too is this piece about confusion. Because we stay in confusion. It's like we pretend we don't know, right? Because then we start to go, well, what is this going to mean? And we start to tell ourselves stories, and then we start to project ourselves way into the future. And we're like, this is going to mean this is going to mean this, and this is going to happen. And my family's going to, this is going to affect this person negatively. And we go into story and we create. We have such an imagination. However, a lot of times we use it against ourselves. Like we really don't know how it's going to go. I mean, how many times have some of us, we've told ourselves a story about what's going to happen. We take action and it doesn't happen anything like we thought it would. Like we'd have a conversation we thought would go really poorly. And you're just like, oh, that went a lot easier than I actually thought it would. But we do this. We go into story. So when you're doing this as well, try as much as you can is bring yourself back to the present moment. It's like not about going about where this is going to lead to and what's going to happen. It really is just about what isn't working for me. Like, what am I filling my space up with? Because, Sonia's exactly right. When we fill our space up with things we don't want, we don't have space for what we do want. I did a video a couple months ago. It was kind of silly, but it's what came to mind. It's like we can't be going through McDonald's drive-through and getting Big Mac meals and supersizing it and then being confused when we don't have space for like a prime rib dinner or lobster dinner, whatever like floats your boat. Like you can't do both. Like you just can't do both, right? Got to stop eating the McDonald's supersized meal if you want the prime rib dinner. So it really is just at this moment having an awareness about it and just sitting with it, just being, just going, okay. And often we'll be surprised at how much of a relief it feels to actually own it. And you don't have to tell anybody. Here's the other part of this. You don't have to tell a soul. And in fact, often when we start to face these no's and we start to really accept a no, in fact, often it is best just to kind of hold it. Allow yourself time to process that, especially if you're having an awarenesses that are ones you've been denying and resisting for a long time. Just sit with it. You don't have to do anything. Just be. So that's just what I wanted to add.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. So with this, just to really emphasize why this is so important, is that when you own your no's, it starts to make space to start receiving all kinds of things, including imagination, inspiration, ideas, and there's space now for your yeses. There's space now for your yeses. Another thing that I just want to tie in that you touched on, Andrea, is when we don't give ourselves permission to say no, and the space of our awareness and the space of our lives is filled with so much stuff, what's really happening with that lack of permission, because we don't know any better, which is, that's a-okay, but this is the thing that can be the game changer, is what's really occurring is you are engaging in resistance. You are resisting your truth. You're resisting perhaps your fears, because what will it mean if I face this? There's a lot of resistance that most of us don't even know is happening for us. And what you resist persists. So this is what keeps us stuck. This is what keeps us in jobs where we're unhappy and we're unfulfilled and we're working really hard, because resistance is a form of the doer or the hunter. It's we work hard, we take action, we figure it out with our minds. All of that keeps what's in the space. It starts to become like oatmeal in the bowl. The bowl is designed for space, and the oatmeal that maybe you wanted at one point, because it's not moving into your tummy or into the garbage, is starting to get rock hard and solid. That's the stuckness that we experience. And we feel it. We feel it in our jobs and in situations when we're unhappy. So when we start to say, nope, I don't want this oatmeal, even though I made it and I feel like I'm wasting it, it's a no. You dump it out. It makes space. I don't know why I'm talking about oatmeal today, but it seems like a good analogy. Okay. So with that, this is why we want to know our no's. It starts to create space. So why is space so powerful? Besides the fact that there's room for your yeses and all these other wonderful possibilities, is that space is the invitation. Space is this natural invitation. We also touched on this in our wrap up of 2023. So you don't have to go out and hunt anything. Your empty basket back to the meadow is the invitation for all the new berries and nuts and whatever you're going to welcome that life is always providing. Life is always providing us ideas and inspiration. So many of us love the feeling of being in that creative imagination place, but we don't necessarily know how to activate it. You activate it by being an invitation, because life is always offering it. If there's space and you make room, believe us, okay, opportunities will come, imagination, inspiration, all sorts of things. So as you have space and you just start to receive whatever you receive, welcome that. Okay. We are big believers in journaling. We'll talk more about why in our next steps, but give yourself permission now to want what you want. All right. Just as much permission to say no to things. You don't have to tell anyone. You don't have to take action on it. Just let yourself want what you want. So many times what happens is, even if we get desires that start to float to the surface, the yeah buts come immediately, and the wants don't even see the light of day, because we start to think about like, oh, I can't have that. And especially in the job industry, the whole work life thing that we're all about, it's like the economy. I need to quit my job. I need to pay the bills, my family, like all of these yeah buts. So we can't even let the wants just float to the surface or float onto our journals or into our awareness. So give yourself permission to want what you want. Follow what brings you joy. Put that on paper. Just keep saying yes to what comes, because you've already made the space with your nose. All right. Uncensored, full permission. Really, really powerful. Another thing that can happen is when we're starting to receive our wants and our yeses, it's very common, especially if we've been well trained in the hunter model or the doing model of power, we get up in our heads. We receive a want, boop, what do I do about it? We receive the feeling, it feels good, and then we start to get lost in our heads. All right. So we talked at length about this yesterday when we were preparing for this. We both teach and coach from this place of come back to your body. Come back to your body. You feel yourself go up in your head, stop, breathe, come back to your body, and allow yourself to start asking, okay, I don't know what I want, but I know I'm willing to discover, how do I want to feel? What would feel great in my job? What would feel great in my next steps? What, just play. Really, the energy of play and joy is so very powerful when you're in this space of inviting imagination. So that is the second key. Invite imagination. You don't have to do anything to invite it. Just know that the space is the invitation. Let's see if there's anything else. And so the final thing I wanted to share is, as you do this, you are actually claiming your power. We also talked about this in the wrap up of 2023. So if you missed it, definitely go back. It'll kind of flush out some of the things that we're talking about today. So what many of us do is, like the hunter, we look into the outer world and we think that we need to make something happen. We kind of insert ourselves and impose ourselves into the physical world. That is a legitimate expression of power. It's about controlling things that you can control. However, there's so much that we can't control, especially when it comes to the job markets and what's happening in the world. So this is a very empowering way and an alternative to, how do I feel powerful when I can't control anything? Well, instead of focusing on this outer world orientation, we now shift to an inner world orientation. And you start to, instead of trying to force things you can't force or control things you can't control, you start to receive clarity, receive your truth, receive your feelings. And that is something you have total power over. And life responds to that. Okay. If you give your attention out, energy goes out. If you give your attention in, the flow comes towards you. You become an invitation for the abundance that life is always offering. So these are little seedlings now of what it means to be sovereign. Sovereign is where you are connected to your power within, under all conditions, no matter what's going on with people in your world, no matter what's happening in the news. This is where you start to connect to your power, independent of the conditions in your outer world. So, Andrea, anything you want to add to inviting imagination?
I've always got something to add. I just want to say too, I almost feel like we need to do an episode on sovereignty. Yeah. I would love to hear if people want to learn more about that. As such, we're going to be hearing more about it in the next coming years. It's super cool. I love everything you said, Sonia. And what I really notice when I'm working with women is this giving yourself permission to really own what you want. And what I often discover is it comes in layers too. So I want to say, if you're starting this process, and for many people, they've never really asked themselves this question before. It's amazing. I've been asking myself this question for years. However, I used to do this socially where I'd go out and ask somebody, like, what do you want? And they're like, kind of looking at me like I'm an alien. Like, what do you mean? What do I want in my career? Whatever. I can only do this. So if you start to notice like you're still caught in your head a lot, just allow and know that it is a process. Like sometimes it does take time to dig a little bit deeper and to really connect with yourself. Because again, our society has really been dominant in using our brains. And so much of what Sonia and I teach and what we do and what we embody is leading from our hearts, leading from our soul, and connecting with our body in this now moment. And then what we create is this balance. We always need our brain, but right now we're in a dominant brain and it's not working. It's not working. It's too much of that action and that doing. So just have patience with yourself. If you notice that you're having resistance, you're not quite tapping in, or you're feeling like you're only giving possibilities of what you want that you think are possible. That kind of, I always call it the list. It's the list of what I think is possible, not what I really, really want. So this might take a little bit of time to kind of unfold and continue to give yourself that permission. And you can almost look at it like play. Like honestly, play with it. Like, and ask yourself, like, how good could it get? It doesn't mean, like Sonia said, you don't have to act on it. It doesn't actually mean you ever even need to get there. This is not saying any of this. Because what we do is as soon as we do that, we stomp it down. We just flop the lid right down on it. And it just closes and shuts everything down. So, and I always say, when I'm working with women, like, even if you shoot up here, okay, and you only make it here, isn't that better than shooting here and getting here? So if you never reach it, who cares? But if you're having fun along the way on that path, isn't that what we really want? Right? So I think that was pretty much most of what I wanted to share. There was a lot of such good things you shared there. Yeah, I think that's good. Did you want to respond, or should I hop into number 3?
Just hop into it. I think we got a lot of good stuff done already.
Okay, so number 3 is follow the breadcrumbs of inspiration. And this one is a big paradigm shift. Like, I feel like this is one of the biggest pieces that I see that needs to shift for so many people. It had to shift for me, and I know for Sonia, it's the same thing. It's following breadcrumbs instead of needing to have a 10-year strategy plan locked down tight. We live in a world that wants us to have it all figured out. Like, think of it. When you're in high school, you're supposed to have the next 30 years. Like, what are you going to do with your life? And have it all figured out, And then we get into our careers. You go to an interview. What's your 10-year plan? And you're supposed to give an answer. Like, you're supposed to give an answer. I want to be in this kind of a management position. I want to be leading this many people, or whatever it might look like. And then what happens is we follow that plan, right? Because we don't want to be a quitter. We don't want to be a quitter. We follow that plan. But what we do is, in that process, we don't do a bunch of check-ins to see if we're enjoying it, if it's bringing us fulfillment, if we're happy. We don't ever do check-ins. And the problem with this whole thing is, now we get to people, who come to me who've been in a career and they've just been following this path because they were told this is what they were supposed to do. You're supposed to have a plan and you're supposed to stick with it. You're committed. And I did that. I mean, I'm, when I share all this is me to a T. I was in high school, my parents were like, you have to go to university. I picked a very conservative career because it was safe. Okay. There's always going to be a job for accountants, right? That's why I picked it. And I'm good at math. That's literally the 2 reasons I picked it. There'd always be jobs and I'm good at math. It's ridiculous when I look back at it, but that's how so many of us were taught. Mm-hmm. And so that's the problem, is we don't ever look. So we do this. We're like, I got a plan. marching, and we're good little doers, right? We're just doing, and we keep marching forward. And yet there's this really cool thing over here that I could have done. This really cool thing over here, but we don't even see it. And then we get to this point, like I said, where we're 10, 15, 20 years down the road, and we're like, I don't feel happy. I don't feel joy. And this is what, so much of what we're teaching is, okay, so if you're in this path where you're not happy, where you notice you are settling or you're in the wrong place, how do you get yourself back on track to feeling in alignment? Alignment and to feeling joyful, alignment to feeling fulfilled is actually about following breadcrumbs. So that means when you take a step, before you take the step, you ask yourself, how does this feel? Am I inspired? Does this feel good? So in this exercise, we talked about, okay, so what do I want more of? You can start to look at, what is one little step I could take? One step. I'm not talking 5 years, 10 years again, but your conditioning is going to want to take you to do that. Like, what is the next step? What is the next step? It really is an unfolding, because what happens is you take one step. Do I feel good? You kind of look around. Do I like this? Does this resonate with me? Is this where I want to be? Yes or no? Then you take the next step and the next step and the next step. And it is literally breadcrumbs. And the trick here is to not let your mind and the sense of control, I've got to know all the steps. That's where we get a lot of control a lot of the time. It's always coming back to the present moment. Present moment. And a lot of what Sonia and I are talking about today is about being in the present moment. Like it truthfully is, because we do this as humans. Our brains go to the past and our brains will go to the future. Stressing about the past, well, why we can't have what we want, and then going to the future about how we're going to make it happen. So a lot of this is really bringing back to the present moment. And I mean, you look on our history, we've got, teachers, I can think of like Eckhart Tolle, the power of now. Really, our power is only in this now moment. So that's where we always want to bring ourselves back to. So like, what feels good? I mean, I've talked about in different lives before where I literally walk into a bookstore and go, like, what do I need right now that would actually help, create more joy for me? And I'll literally pick a book off the shelf and I'll be like, there's something in there for me. Maybe it's making a phone call. Maybe it's having a conversation with somebody. I'm talking little tiny steps. And again, always checking in with yourself. How does this feel? Am I enjoying this process? And again, have fun with it. Breadcrumbs can be fun because you don't know what it is. It's kind of like a bit of a mystery. And I think that's the switch. I know for myself, I'd love you to share too, Sonia, what you found. But like when I switched it into a bit of a game, like we take life so seriously, like we really, really do. And especially our careers, there's a lot of pressure we put on ourselves, right? To look a certain way, to be perceived a certain way, all this stuff, right? To be seen as successful, to have the right job title on our resume. There's a lot of pressure. And I mean, I know I felt it. Talk about a conservative profession that I was in, right? I mean, there was a lot of pressure. And when we can start to actually play with it and have fun with it, that's really when the cool things start to come in and we get the inspiration and we've got that space of play that really is where we can really shine, in all honesty. So yeah, I'd love to hear your insights, Sonia.
Yeah, that was everything you said was so wonderful. I think the thing that really just popped for me, it's really cool when you're the one talking and I can be in listening mode because it just brings even more the space of receiving insights. And I was thinking about my own journey of becoming someone who I live my life that way. I literally live my life following the breadcrumbs. And I used to be the queen of making lists and plans and project manager and building a business and doing a lot of hunting, a lot of thinking. So it was really an unlearning process. And along the way, so today, it's super fun, but it wasn't always fun. And so what I wanted to kind of maybe shine the spotlight on is, just like you talked in the last key, it's a process. So we are painting a picture of this can be really fun, and life provides, right? You get to shift from you being the sole provider, like the hunter who needs to make things happen, to opening up and allowing life to provide. But there's a certain amount of letting go of control. And this control is something that we've learned. There's some places where control is perfect. It's the perfect tool for the job. But you know, that saying about if you want to build a house and the only tool you have is a hammer, then everything becomes a nail. Building a house with only a hammer when you could use a screwdriver is a lot harder than when you have the right tool, which is sometimes I need a hammer, sometimes I need a screwdriver. Well, sometimes you need to think and do and control conditions in your world. And sometimes you need to be and lean back and receive and let life provide. And letting go of the hammer because you don't know how to use the screwdriver, it can be uncomfortable. It can be a little bit scary, which is why we talked so much about safety. You know, like you don't have to tell anyone. You can just let this be your own inner world journey between you and your journal, or get support. That's what Andrea and I specialize in. You know, reach out for support while you're transitioning to expand your skill set, not just from the doing, but also the being, not just from achieving, but to also receiving. You know, this is what, again, dissolves those upper limits. And so let it be okay if you feel uncomfortable, if it does feel scary, to just follow the breadcrumbs. But I will offer that in the way of being, miracles happen in the messy. Okay. Being is about life. It's not about hunting, which is about destruction sometimes, but oftentimes that's what it's about. But it's about opening to life. And life is messy. Agriculture is messy. Having babies is messy. Art is messy. And they're all miraculous, right? So we can open up to the magic of life. Let it be messy. It's okay if it's uncomfortable. Control is one expression of power, but the power that comes from within, from really listening to your truth and playing and following the breadcrumbs and being curious, that just really opens up possibilities that you just couldn't be open to when you only had one skill set, which is what we've been so well trained in. All of that doing and thinking and control. There is an alternative skill set and they complement each other. So that was what arose for me with this one.
So good. I love all your analogies. We've talked about oatmeal. We've talked about building a house. Now I've talked about Big Mac meals. Like, I don't know. This is just
True. I love metaphors. Gosh, I love metaphors. I think they're the best way to communicate some ideas sometimes. And they're fun.
okay. Yeah, no, they are fun. No, that's perfect. That's perfect. And you're right. It isn't comfortable at first. And I mean, you know, it's funny because as you were talking, I was actually thinking about you and I. So the backstory, just quickly, because this is the example. Like if we could have even come up with an example. So like Sonia and I didn't even know each other a year ago. Now, if I had said, you know, planned last year, I've got to find somebody to partnership up with to do a podcast or, you know, an episode, LinkedIn live series and all that stuff. I didn't have all that. I didn't have any of that in my brain. However, what I do have is an intention to share and to collaborate and to spread knowledge and to create community and create awareness. The form, and this is a lot of what we're talking about too, like we don't always know the form right away, right? I didn't know. And it was literally breadcrumbs with you and I. Like we crossed paths and then we're like, oh, hey, we have a lot in common. And just, you know, it literally was following breadcrumbs.
Yes.
Like it's the exact, but we did not focus on the form at all.
So much so that I have to say this because it was so funny. I remember when I'm like, what was the first phone call? How did this even happen? I can't even remember the first phone call that we can't remember. It just happened.
It wasn't like this linear plan that we had. Right. It wasn't like we said, yeah, I'm going to go out and find this person. Right. Because we couldn't have found each other that way.
Right.
We both created the space and the opening to it, and the universe aligned us and we took action. We booked the
Yeah.
phone call somehow. We don't remember how. But however, they did happen. But like it's actually probably one of the best examples right there of how, but we had the intention and the space,
Yes.
which is really what we're talking about, which, like I said, you can't force these things, right?
Right.
You can't control this. You can't
No.
force this. It needed to happen in its own time, and we've given it the space and energy to do that. So I just wanted to share that because I think it actually is, and it is kind of
That's
funny that
great.
we don't know how it happened. But anyways, okay. So just to do a quick recap, knowing your nose. First of all, know your nose. Get really clear. Clear the space. We know most of you, again, to go back to that capacity, whether it's emotionally, mentally, spiritually, don't necessarily have that capacity. Clear it. Write your nose down. Own it. You don't need to share it. Next one is invite imagination. So we start talking about diving into the yeses, and then again, follow the breadcrumbs of inspiration. That's sort of the broad overview. And I'll just say this again, just because I think it, I really feel like it needs emphasizing, is just stay in the present moment. Just be with it. Like Sonia said, allow it to be an inner journey. It doesn't have to be shared anywhere. Just create that own safety within yourself. There's something that I am really passionate about saying too, and I've shared a lot of this in my content, is that safety has to come from within. We've been taught and conditioned to look for safety in jobs and government, in the economy, in so many different things. And the moment we look for safety outside of ourselves is the moment we completely hand over our power. Has to come from within. So give it to yourself. Give yourself that safety to sit with all these things. Okay. So now, as always, we have an awareness practice and aligned action. So, and we will keep repeating this on each and every live because I think it's really important. We talk about the awareness practice is create the space. There we go again, right?
Yeah.
Give yourself the space to actually do this, whatever that looks like for you. Whether it's going out in nature or just finding a corner in your house where it's quiet and you're not going to be disturbed. Honor yourself. So much about this is really truly honoring yourself. Grab a notepad, whatever that might look like. The first question, the prompt I want you to ask yourself is, what no longer feels in alignment anymore? What no longer feels in alignment anymore? So this goes back to that very first know your nose. So just write out, and you can just brain dump. Like honestly, just brain dump. Write out the big things, write out the little things in every area of your life. Write them down. The key is what no longer feels in alignment. Not no longer what do you think is in alignment. Listen to your body. How does your body feel? So much of the times we ignore how our body feels. Our bodies are always giving us signs, right? If you think about something and you start to feel heavy and ick feeling, whether it's in your body or just your energy field or in your mind, you start to feel heavy, things like that, that's not usually a good sign. So start to notice, like, how do you actually also feel in your body when you think about things? And just start to become aware. Really start to become aware, because this is how we start to make better decisions moving forward in our life for all of us, right? When we're actually aware how we feel about things, right? So prompt and ask yourself that question. Second thing is, what does feel in alignment? Okay, what does feel in alignment? Now, I don't want you to put parameters on this. So often we think of form. When we ask that question, it's often we go to form. This job will feel like an alignment, or if I get this promotion or I get this pay. We often jump right to the form. However, what I encourage you to ask yourself is, what experiences feel in alignment? What feels good? How do I actually want to feel? And get really descriptive. Play here. What we'll often do is, especially when we start this work, is I'll ask somebody, like, how do you want to feel? And they'll be like, happy. Okay, cool. What does happy feel like to you? Does it feel vibrant? Does it feel joyful? Does it feel like high energy? Do you feel vivacious? Like, what does that feel like? Or does happy feel more like peaceful? Does it feel more content or just calm? really dig deep. How do you want to feel? And here's the thing. Okay. So Sonia and I are both super passionate and about energy, right? Tap into it, because every time you keep asking yourself and you go deeper and deeper and deeper into how you want to feel, what you actually doing is you are raising your frequency. You are changing your state, and life starts to look a whole lot different the more and more we tap into how we want to feel. And it might feel, when you start doing that, it's like, well, what does that mean? How do I do that? Again, we will start to do that often. Our monkey brains will start to do that dance. Come back to the present moment. How do I want to feel? Sit, breathe. And if your monkey brain starts to flip in, I use monkey brain because I know my brain can do a number on me. If I let it, it can go, it can do gymnastics and trapeze and all kinds of things out there, right? Come back to the present moment. Come back to your body. Like, I will literally put my hands on my heart. Breathe. How do I want to feel? And just write those words down. And the longer you can stay in that state of focusing on, because as Sonia said, what we focus on expands. The longer you can stay, if you can do that for a couple of minutes, write it down. Like, you can literally, I mean, you could write down 20 or 30 things. How do you want to feel? I want to feel valued. I want to feel inspired. I want to feel joyful. I want to feel, I mean, you can go for it. Like, literally just let it rip. Give yourself permission to do that. Those states are possible, okay? So that's your awareness practice. So now, in terms of aligned action, and a lot of what we've talked today about is this inner journey, right? And it's so, so important. I mean, one of the things I really see for 2024 is people really recognizing how much of the results we achieve in life is the inner journey. It really is. We, like I said, always taking action. A lot of people you'll hear say 80% inner journey, 20% action. I don't know what the percentages truly are. I don't think anybody really does. However, what I do know is that your inner journey, your inner state, your inner being is the majority of the results in your life. But we also want you to take action. So we want you to take one. We're going to say one. Take one action for your no. Like, put up one boundary, put up one something. And here's the thing. It doesn't have to be huge. We're not saying go out and quit your job if you don't like it. We're not going, march into your boss's office and ask for a raise. Like, we're not saying take a giant step if that doesn't feel right for you. Maybe you are ready, maybe you're not. This could be a micro no. So when I deal with clients, like people that come to me, it's about finding a new career, transitioning to something new. So if you're somebody in that place right now, a micro no could be actually creating more space in your life, so you actually have the capacity to then start looking for something new. So that might mean not looking at emails from work in your evening time. That could be your micro no to starting to extricate yourself energetically and eventually physically from a career that you don't want. But that could be the micro step. And again, as Sonia talked about, it might feel uncomfortable. You might feel resistance to it. That's all okay. But the sooner you start, especially after this, like, take the momentum of this live, take the momentum and do it. Join our Telegram group and tell us what you did. Share it. Let us celebrate you. These things do take practice. They're not something we just lick overnight. We're like, oh yeah, I can say no. Like, for so many of us, I mean, I know I am and I won't say completely reformed people pleaser, because I don't know if you're ever completely reformed. However, I was a diehard people pleaser. It takes time. It takes time to say no and to feel okay with it. But just know that right now, if you say no, it might feel super uncomfortable. It might feel awkward, and you might be like, oh, I do not like this. What I will tell you is it gets easier. And then when you start to see how much space it creates for you to invite in what you do want, you're just like, yeah, why didn't I do this sooner? I think most of us did. Like, it's like, we look back and go, that was one of the biggest steps we took in actually creating what we want, is the no's. Like, they're massive. So take one step, one no, share it, share it, share it. So those are the aligned action and awareness practice.
Wonderful. Love it. I thought you gave such good examples. And this saying the no, which makes the space for everything else. I think I'll just add one example because I just did this with a client yesterday. So I have a client who is, she's ready to build her business. So she's an attorney, she's ready to build her business, and she's kind of maxed out at all because there's so much doing, there's no space to grow. And as we were, really evaluating, her next steps, kind of going through a similar process, the one no that she knew would be such a game changer was to create, it was saying no to interruptions, because she needed her team to do things for her, but it was like she was constantly being interrupted answering questions. And she didn't know how to say no to that without the team member getting offended, feeling like she was an unavailable boss if she needed questions answered. So it was one no. It sounds simple and sounds easy, but we had to really make space for all of the other feelings and concerns and beliefs and the things in our heads that were in the way, so she could start to receive the yeses that would make it possible to create no interruptions and a sacred space so that she could focus on the things that she needed to focus to grow her business. So again, those no's are always the beginning to everything. And it's a great practice. We really encourage you to make space because the other thing I'll just add, Andrea, you said this so perfectly, is, it's inner work and it's outer work, right? And they go hand in hand. And the thing that I will say is a lot of us have cause and effect all wrong. We think I have to do something in order to get a result done. But your power actually begins internally. It begins in consciousness. And when we do the consciousness work, it informs the actions that we take. Our actions are actually a delivery mechanism for our consciousness. And if we're not aware of what's in our consciousness, we're going to deliver whatever stories and limitations and fears are inside of us. But when we do that deeper work, then our actions are imbued with this much more empowered, clear consciousness that's what then really makes your actions be like supercharged. So inner work is really where your cause and effect begins.
Cool.
So what's next? Time to wrap up. All right. So thank you all for being here. We want your feedback, please, in the chat, DM us, follow What Feels Good, feel inspired. If you'd like to join our Telegram group, join us. And we are here to serve. And also, we are rolling out a brand new website. So if you missed any episodes of the Career Doctors, they are getting loaded up. Hopefully by this week, we'll be fairly caught up. We've now done 4 episodes. So go to thecareerdoctors.com and come back for episode. This is actually episode number 5 we'll be doing.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
No, this is 5 today.
This is 5 today. Oh my
I
God.
know.
Wow, we've done a lot. Okay. So come back for episode number 6, where we're going to be talking about the power of your intuition and feelings. This is such a juicy topic. There's so many ways that we have unknowingly believed negative messages that causes us to squash this superpower that we all have. So we're going to be talking about the power of your intuition and feelings and how to tap into your superpower. So thank you for being here. It's been totally fun. Thank you, Andrea, for doing this with me. And remember, as you show up for yourself, next steps will show up for you. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.